Welcome to the Ink to Film podcast. I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
And we're going to do something a little different right now. We're going to do an adaptation news episode. This is something we're gonna give a try. We'll see if we like it and if you guys like it. Basically, the format's going to be, we're going to talk about some adaptation news. In particular, this week, we're going to talk about horror-related adaptation news. Then we're going to do a little storytelling. Each of us have have at least one, maybe multiple ghost stories from when we were younger, or I don't even know when yours was. Mine was when I was a kid. We're going to tell those to each other, talk about them, because we kind of got into a little bit of that in our episode on The Exorcist.
We've done some similar stuff in the past, but this is going to be sort of more rigidly in a specific genre, and I think we're going to continue to at least attempt, if people enjoy this or are interested in this, attempt to do different genres based on sort of projects that we're covering potentially. But
or we might have more general ones in the future that are just kind of everything grab bag. Could be.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea is we're going to put this out on the main feed, but if you want it earlier, if you like this kind of thing, it's going to be coming out on the Patreon feed about basically a week earlier. So if you want to have the hot off the presses news as quick as it's happening as we're putting it out, definitely check out our Patreon, and we'll put that available to our $2 tier, which is where you also get our adaptation adjacent episodes, which we do pretty frequently. There's a bunch of them on there now where we do sequels to adaptations and stuff like that. So definitely check out Patreon if you want to learn more about that. But if you're ready, man, let's get into the news. So I'm going to start it off with a Neil Gaiman bit of news that came out. This is on Tor.com. This was Neil Gaiman sort of talking about this upcoming Sandman adaptation, which I know has been on our radar for a while. Mm-hmm. Basically, it was greenlit, casting was done, they started building sets, and then COVID happened. So everything is currently on hold, waiting for, basically just for television production to really ramp back up and start back up. I've heard some stuff maybe is happening, but it seems like major productions aren't really happening right now. From what
it's
I've
tough.
heard.
Yeah, it's really hard because just the liability that's there for certain companies to greenlight shows and greenlight movies and stuff right now is really tough.
Yeah, good point. So anyway, but some more information came out about it in this interview he did with Collider, it looks like. This was after the Audible version of Sandman came out, which has all these stars. I don't know if you've seen the list
I've
of
heard
stars.
about
Check
this.
it out if you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
Star-studded adaptation.
Really excited to check
out.
that out because I've really wanted to read the story for such a long time, and seeing it's kind of blowing up as an audiobook.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's like a comic, right? Like I feel like visual is so important to it. So maybe when we do cover it, which I'm thinking we will when this comes out, maybe we'll be able to do the audiobook in some form too, just because I think it'd be fun. Right. Maybe do a mix of both. I don't know. Anyway, so the news that came out is that the first season is going to cover the events of Preludes and Nocturnes and the Doll's House, which I haven't read Sandman, so I actually don't know exactly what this is referring to, but if you are a Sandman fan, you might know what this means. Also, he said that they're right in the middle of casting right now, and he sort of gently tried to let fans know that they're probably not going to have Michael Sheen as Lucifer, because there's a lot of excitement about Michael Sheen. He was just in Good Omens,
right? And
he plays Lucifer on the Audible adaptation. So a lot of people were hoping he was going to be in the show, and Gaiman said that he's one of the most difficult actors to get on the planet right now. If you want to book Michael Sheen in something, you have to do it years in advance. So it's interesting because he's basically saying don't get your hopes up. He also didn't completely rule it out. He just said it's probably not going to happen.
I mean, if I was going to get Michael Sheen on a show, I might build anticipation in this way as well. So we'll see. We'll see how it actually lands. But you can't. You got to do what you can.
And I think he was also kind of speaking about a lot of the casting in general. He said that the audiobook is a great starting off point, and it's going to be something that they're going to be leaning into, but not to expect everybody who plays every role in the audiobook to be true. Which also sounds like he's kind of saying maybe some of them could be true, though.
Yeah,
maybe some of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like they're really trying to use this as also kind of a marketing tool for it, getting interest back up in Sandman, to me at least. And he even said that they're also going to be looking at it as far as they're thinking about making some plot changes, and they want to see how the plot is working in the audiobook for people. And they're kind of looking at the reaction of that and they're trying to make decisions about plot changes, also character changes, maybe changing the genders of some characters, things like that.
It sounds really cool. I'm excited. I can't wait to cover that story in some way.
Yeah. He did say, if you are somebody who loves the original comics, you will love the Netflix series. And I think if you are somebody who knows the original comics well, you have an absolute advantage plot-wise in the Netflix series. But much like something like Game of Thrones, while you have an advantage, you will not always be one step ahead. Oh, he also revealed that the comic is set in 1988, whereas the adaptation will be set in present day.
Interesting.
So there's going to be a change there, too.
Mm-hmm. At some point, we will be covering it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so, man. It's interesting because it looks like the first 10 episodes will cover about the first 16 comics, but I don't know how much like content that is like when they're all put together. Because I only read graphic novels. I haven't been reading much like comic by comic.
I don't know. It really varies, but it's. I think it sounds 16 sounds like a lot, but you know, if there's anywhere from like 15 to 20 pages per comic, then you know how quickly you can read a comic book page.
Watchmen was what, like 10 or 12 issues?
Yeah, 10 issues. Those were pretty dense issues, I would say too.
Yeah, I don't know how that compares with Sandman. I'd be curious. But anyway, yeah, I'm excited for this one for sure, man.
Well, since we're covering The Exorcist and we're kind of trying to do horror stuff, we got to talk about Stephen King and all of the adaptations, the renaissance of all the King Assance and everything that's been happening with him for the last 10 years or whatever. We have 3 different adaptations that are worth noting right now. We have Darren Aronofsky, who is going to optioned and will be producing an adaptation of The Life of Chuck under his production company. This story follows a middle-aged man, Charles Krantz, whose life is segmented into several supernatural chapter breaks. So
interesting.
It's kind of Darren Aronofsky has been known to sort of do like unorthodox movies in some ways. I'm sure you've seen some of his films, but I think it's a cool jumping off point for a director like him, and whether you like his stuff or not, I think he's an interesting voice.
I like Black Swan. And didn't he also do The Wrestler? I thought The Wrestler was really good.
I think he did The Wrestler, yeah. I'm pretty sure you're right on that. But like Requiem, I'm sure you've seen. Have you seen that, Requiem of a Dream?
Oh, yeah, Requiem for a Dream. That's Aronofsky? I didn't know that.
Yep, that's him.
Yeah, I like that. Now, it does say he's producing it in his like studio. So it sounds like it's not committed that he is going to direct.
Right, which is kind of the case with, some of this stuff comes in and big names come in and they're producers a lot of time. Which brings me into, one of the largest television producers right now. His name is Ryan Murphy. Are you familiar? He produced
I don't think so.
American Horror Story and Glee for a long time. So like he's absolutely massive. Writer on that, I believe, as well. A lot of focus usually. Like when I say massive, I mean like one of the most powerful producers right now. Like he can just like sort of point to something and say, I want to do that and get it done. Wow. And he, along with Netflix and Blumhouse, are optioning Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which John Lee Hancock will adapt and direct. John Lee Hancock has directed The Alamo, The Blind Side, Saving Mr. Banks. So he's done some pretty notable movies of late. You've probably seen The Blind Side or Saving Mr. Banks, right?
Yeah, I did see The Blind Side. Mm-hmm.
So pretty well-known director. Ryan Murphy tends to feature stories about LGBTQ-related characters and events and things like that, really. That's kind of, he's a bastion of that, and he kind of
that's cool.
Make sure to have those stories told. So maybe there's some of that going on in the story. Basically, the story follows a young boy who befriends an older billionaire who lives in his small town Maine neighborhood, and they bond over the man's first iPhone. But when the man dies, the boy discovers he's still able to communicate with his friend from beyond the grave by contacting the device that was buried with him.
Interesting. So it must be a newer story from King if he's got iPhones and stuff in it.
It's gotta be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Love it. I mean, we're King fans on this podcast. We've covered a bunch of his stuff. So, it's always exciting to hear about more King adaptations. I do think more than just Stephen King needs to be adapted by Hollywood.
Right.
There are other horror writers, which we'll get to a couple more here.
I like to see things by Stephen King adapted, obviously, but at the same time, plenty of other writers and people should have their stuff adapted. But right now, you know how gangbusters all of his movies are doing and how popular it is for everybody. So one more adaptation. It's going to be Rat, which has been optioned by Ben Stiller, who intends to direct, produce, and star in.
Wow.
Yeah. So it'll be a full-on Ben Stiller production. Ben Stiller has directed some comedies in sort of like your early to mid 2000s. He directed things like Tropic Thunder and Zoolander, The Cable Guy in like the 90s. So he's like
Cable Guy, underrated film.
Yeah,
I actually like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He that was one of his more early directorial.
Did not know he directed
efforts.
that. That's funny. I didn't really directed so many of these. That's cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it could be really cool. It could be a chance. I like to see actors who are, like I just said, he's known for directing a lot of comedy. I would like to see him, branch out and do something different like this. So I'm excited to see, someone like Jason Bateman, who was like sort of seen as a comedic actor, a comedic kind of person, and he's directing and doing all this more serious work. So it's always fun to see people make transitions like that.
Yeah, sounds cool, man. I'm in. All right, I'm going to keep it moving. So we've got a bunch of Junji Ito stories that have been coming out. So a lot of it seems like it's just rumors. He mentioned certain things. One of them I actually just saw right before we started recording, and because we were just talking about Stephen King, I'm going to mention in an interview he recently said that he would love to do a manga adaptation of some Stephen King stuff. Like, he's a big Stephen King fan apparently.
I mean,
he wants to do
cool.
a manga adaptation. I think it'd be really cool. He didn't say a specific title that he wanted to do, but like the idea of Junji Ito doing a manga of Stephen King, I don't know.
His art is so iconic. It's so like when you look at it, it's so amazing.
It's amazing.
Anything he draws is going to be incredible. So
okay, so awesome. I'm going to talk about one that I don't really know how to feel about. So Quibi greenlights Tomie based off the horror manga series. Quibi, I don't know. It sounds like maybe you know a little bit about it. Quibi is an app, I guess, that does mobile web series content. Their mission statement is they're going to try and make like 10-minute or less episodes, specifically web content to be viewed on a mobile device if you want. So I guess it's not like widescreen. It can be viewed vertically or horizontally.
Right.
They are the ones who have optioned this. This app just came out in 2020, and it's really, they're spending like $1 billion trying to do content for it. This is one of the ones that's happening. And recently, so the director is Alexandre Aja, who did the movies High Tension. He also was on the 10 directors to watch list recently for Variety. He directed The Hills Have Eyes, Mirrors, and Piranha 3D. Apparently, I don't know. I don't know if I saw any of those. Anyway, horror director. He's directing, and then they also got the writer David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who was one of the writers of Aquaman, and is writing the sequel to Aquaman, I guess. And then he also wrote Conjuring 2 and 3, and did 12 episodes of The Walking Dead. So prolific writer, right? All of this comes together, and you recently signed Adeline Rudolph to be the star and for the title role of Tomie. And she was recently in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. She is a German-Korean actress. So I have not seen The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, but I am aware of it. So she's going to be Tomie. Tomie is like some sort of supernatural, I was reading the kind of description, I haven't read it, supernatural woman spirit who like seduces people and then I think eats them.
Right. I think I'm a little bit familiar. So
okay.
I think it's been adapted before, and
that's
manga fans.
I was also going to say there are 9 adaptations of this Japanese films that have been made.
Right, and manga fans, like Junji Ito, manga fans specifically, tend to really dislike a lot of these adaptations. So it's hard because he's very difficult to adapt. A lot of his work is in black and white, and a lot of them were not in black and white. So you're dealing with a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I don't know how to feel about this. We got a web series, new app.
It sounds like they're spending the money to get creatives involved in all of that kind of thing, but the idea of watching something vertically doesn't appeal to me personally.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the old man on the lawn saying like, get off my lawn and all that, but like that just doesn't feel like sort of the same. And I know people are watching stuff on their phones, but there's certain prestige that comes with like TV and movies and things like that. And like when you turn things vertical and like you watch it in your hand and stuff, it kind of changes it. That's not to say that you can't do that.
I'll be curious. I'll watch the first episode when it comes out. Hopefully it's like free to watch. I'd definitely check it out. I'm curious.
Right. Yeah. I'll check it out. It's Junji Ito, and I hope that it's a better adaptation than what's come out before of the same. But basically, from what I understand, it's like a succubus. Character.
Yeah, kind of like a succubus type creature that can't. It's very difficult to kill, and maybe comes back even more powerful if you attempt to kill it. And
Gotcha.
I mean, Junji Ito, so it's terrifying. I don't even have to like look at it to know it's terrifying.
Something Junji Ito related that I am very excited about is something we probably have mentioned before, but there's a 4-part mini series for Uzumaki coming out on Adult Swim. And this is going to be in black and white, and they're really attempting. Junji Ito, he was really excited about the specific director that came on board, known for some really well known anime right now, and they got Colin Stetson, who was the composer of Ari Aster's Hereditary. So a lot of like big names are in this. They're keeping it black and white, like I said, to preserve the style and sort of the tone, because it is important to his style. And you know, I think that it's going to do justice. There's a trailer that you can watch on Adult Swim that I've watched multiple times now.
Yeah.
And like, I'm excited. And the release date,
It's got
unfortunately,
that style, right?
definitely. And unfortunately, the release date is sometime in 2020.
Mm.
Was as of like right as the pandemic was really kicking up.
We're keeping
so
an
don't
eye
really
on that
know.
one. It could be potentially like if it fits how we have to do things for coverage, that could be something we tackle. It's just going to depend on some factors, but I would love to do some Ito on the podcast proper. That would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's seen the image of the girl who has like the eye and the spiral all the way back into her head. And everything.
Probably his most famous image.
I would
drawing.
I would think so. Yeah, everybody's seen it.
It's the spiral one. If you're not sure which one it is, it's the spiral one. I'm excited for that one for sure. All right, so more Ito, since we're in full Ito mode. He is also, this is just another thing he talked about, but in an interview he said that he has been talking with Hideo Kojima about possibly working on a horror game, which I guess I was reading through this article. Kojima has said repeatedly that he has got ideas for horror, a horror game that he wants to do. He wants it to be revolutionary. He said, here's an actual quote. Something that uses a revolutionary method to create terror that doesn't just make you pee your pants, but crap them. I already have ideas in mind.
That's
so
awesome.
he's been trying to come up with this horror game, and apparently has been in some sort of talks with Junji Ito, which is amazing. Just thinking of those two coming together. I played PT. I didn't beat it, but I played some of it, and I've seen a playthrough of it. That's a really cool, like, it was like a Silent Hill game that came out, but it was like a demo, and then nothing really ever came of it, and it got deleted. I know a lot of people were upset about that. So it's kind of now this like difficult to find game that exists.
It's like cult following, yeah. Tons of stuff to say with this. Obviously, we just talked about Ito, like his style, everything that he brings to horror was a big deal. Kojima is, you know, if I was to make a list, like you were talking about with filmmakers to watch, game developers to absolutely play everything they come out with, Kojima's right there. So he was sort of known for Metal Gear and all this stuff, and was working for Konami, but they sort of tried to box him in, and ultimately like he wanted to make some games that they weren't interested in. And recently Death Stranding came out. That was the first production from his company on its own, fully produced by him and his company. And you're talking about revolutionary ways to create terror. Like this you know, it's not going to be for everybody, but there's something to be said for like revolutionizing different types of gameplay and things like that. Yeah. And Death Stranding absolutely does that. Like that, you haven't played a game like it. And the way that the gameplay sort of matches the metaphor of it all, and like the idea of connecting everyone, and rather than like using social medias and things like this to separate us, to connect us. It's kind of the whole deal with that game. And he's able to, like, through gameplay, portray that. And I just think, like, if Kojima's making it, I'm playing it. And the idea of this game potentially coming out and him revolutionizing horror again, like, that sounds incredible to me.
Yeah, cool stuff. All right, so there's been some trailers that have come out. One of them is a new teaser for The New Mutants, which is a movie that has been famously delayed like a million times. But this new teaser just came out for Comic-Con. I gave it a watch recently. I thought it looked kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. You said you haven't seen this new trailer. Do you want to give it a watch real quick and we can kind of react to it?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Okay, so we're going to check it out. Go watch it if you want, and we're going to come back and talk about it. So just a second will pass for you. All right, man. What's your reaction?
So it's crazy to me that we live in a time where we're past sort of superhero movies being what they needed to be, which was or what was seen as like the typical. I feel like we're going through the same way that like there was the golden age, the silver age, all this stuff with comics. We're kind of going through that with the movies as well.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that we can go from like, you know, supervillains invading and like giant beams that are going to destroy the earth, sort of stories, and we've got to the point where we can do a horror X-Men story. That being said, like, you know, I feel like the X-Men films have been floundering for a long time now. Unfortunately, and like the kind of fallen away from what X-Men are really about. I think this doesn't necessarily seem. I think this seems like it could be a great superhero sort of horror story. It doesn't feel very X-Men to me, but like I like the New Mutants and like the idea of introducing all these characters. I like that trailer gave me a lot more confidence than the last one I saw. And if this movie ever does come out, you know, I'll go in with open expectations and hopefully I enjoy it.
This was the trailer that made me go, oh yeah, I kind of want to see this, you know? And I don't know what to think. I don't have a lot of these preconceived notions. I don't know who the New Mutants are. Like, I never read the comics, you know what I mean? I assume they're New Mutants. So I don't know a lot about it. I also know that this has been a troubled production for this movie, but that happens sometimes. And this trailer, I don't know, looks pretty good. I'm curious enough to see it. I don't go in with high hopes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I like the bonkers nature of it, right? Like they can trust audiences now to just go with it, with any crazy stuff they're willing to throw out there.
I do like that. You know, you get a movie like Logan, which is very unusual for a, you know, I like seeing comics trying something a little different. Comic book movies, I do co-sign on that. Okay, so there's another adaptation here that is kind of a weird one because it's actually an adaptation of a British TV series that I don't know if this really fits, but I wanted to talk about it because we've covered Gillian Flynn in the past. We covered Sharp Objects on the podcast. Really enjoyed. That was a great HBO series, which made me excited. I've seen Gone Girl. We haven't covered Gone Girl, but I was also a fan of that movie. So Gillian Flynn is doing an adaptation of a British TV series for Amazon called Utopia, and she is the screenwriter for it. So this is not a book she's written. So we probably aren't going to cover it, but I am kind of interested in it and kind of excited for it, and I thought it'd be fun to watch the trailer together, and then we can kind of react to that one, because you said you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, let's check it out. Okay,
so we're going to check that out. We'll be right back. All right, what'd you think, man? This is one I've seen before.
I mean, that's a cool trailer. It definitely looks like, you know, I can't help but think when I see trailers like this, I'm like, damn, Prestige Television is awesome because we're able to have these really cool, crazy stories.
Yeah, it does feel like that, right? It feels like prestige drama.
Right. Which I guess is a point that I want to make with sort of, typically, like if there's a British show and then Americans are adapting it, I kind of sort of feel like, oh, maybe we should just sort of release the British show in America and like have the source be seen by everybody. But there are times that they're able to put, you know, the big US budget into it and sort of the marketing and try to spread it out to the world.
Rainn Wilson, John Cusack, right? Like you get some big stars in it.
Right. It's, you know, I don't think this is that case. You know, I think there are cases of that happening where they're like, this British show is huge. Let's do it in America just to do it.
Well, and I'm excited to see what Gillian Flynn does with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Sharp Objects and Gone Girl. Like, I mean, she's got some chops. And Sharp Objects was such a stylish, interesting visual show that I feel like with Gone Girl and that, like, there's a certain style to Gillian Flynn things that I've been seeing. And it feels like a little bit of that is on display here, even though this feels different too, like almost a little more sci-fi in some ways. I don't know, although very topical, like with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, that was crazy when we saw that. I mean, you don't have Fincher on it like you did on Gone Girl, and you don't have I can't remember the director or the showrunner for I guess Gillian Flynn was a showrunner, right? But there was the director who was on a lot of the episodes that really brought, I feel like, the style of the look. But it seems like you're right. Like she's able to collaborate with people that are able to, like, because like you said, this looks like prestige television. It looks really, really well shot, really stylized. So it seems like the mixture of her writing with you know, collaborators, she's been able to make some really great content so far.
Jean-Marc Vallée?
That sounds right. Sounds like a name I wouldn't remember either. Unfortunately, I should have.
I wasn't gonna say it, man. All right. So one more quick news topic to talk about is a third trailer, but I'm actually going to recommend we don't watch it. It is the new trailer for Lovecraft Country, which is an adaptation we are excited about. We definitely want to cover, coming out on HBO. And Jordan Peele, it looks great. The trailer is amazing, but in my opinion, has some spoilers in it, which I wasn't a big fan of. I was like, I didn't need to see this to be excited for this show, and now this scene is going to be a little bit undercut by the fact that I've seen it in a trailer.
Right. I saw the first trailer, and I don't really know what the show is about, and I like that. You know, like I want to go in not knowing a lot. I'm glad that you told me not to watch it, because typically, like, I just, you know, I see a trailer, and if the first trailer is good enough to where I know I'm going to watch it, I don't like to watch another trailer typically. But I fully believe you. I'm sure it looks great, and I can't wait to cover it or watch it in some way.
Yeah, we will. If you are unlike us and you are curious about trailers, do check it out. I think it's a good trailer. I think it was a great trailer, actually. But if you're like us and you also know you're going to watch it and you don't want to be spoiled, then maybe don't. All right, man, we have gone along on this adaptation news. That's something we've learned, and maybe it's going to take a little bit longer than we thought. But I want to save a little bit of time here at the end to talk about our ghost stories from our pasts. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I have a short one that's kind of weird and vague. So I'll start with that, and then you can give your full one, and I'll give my full one.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is like, I talked in the episode about how I was raised in a religious household, and I don't know if this is like some sort of like traumatic baggage or something, but I can remember growing up, and this was something that like came back to me. This was something that I'd forgotten about that came back to me. But I used to have like these vivid, almost like sleep paralysis, like nightmares, like waking nightmares, where I would see, like, I had like a popcorn ceiling in my childhood bedroom, and I would wake up in the middle of the night, be kind of shocked awake in the middle of the night, and I would like look around my room, be kind of terrified because I was in the dark and I was a kid, and that's how that goes, and I would see the popcorn ceiling, the illusion of it almost moving, and it would almost look like it was shaking sometimes. And I think that I rationalized it in my child mind as like some sort of like demon or devil like waking moment thing that was happening to me. And like we talked about in the episode, like maybe it has something to do with what your brain, the tricks your brain will play on you and things like that. But it was very interesting that I went specifically. I kind of thought of it as like, oh, it's one of these demon moments again or whatever. Like it was like kind of a recurring thing.
Could be night terrors. I mean, that night terrors
right.
Often you feel paralyzed and you see stuff, and you're like half asleep.
Right. And
so
what's weird is that
night terror to me.
What's weird is that I kind of forgot that it was not, I wouldn't say a normal occurrence, but something that happened to me multiple times. And then it came back to me eventually.
Cool. Yeah. I have some stuff like that too. But I think most of them are probably just dreams is my assumption. All right. So my story is an interesting one to me because it's corroborated by two other people. Back in the mid 1990s, 25 years plus now. We're not sure. I actually talked to my brothers and my sister about it, trying to get as many details as I could about this. We were on a family trip to Savannah, Georgia. And I'm going to just say that's going to come back to play a part. That's crazy that my story might have happened in Savannah as well. It is funny. We were on a family trip there. We were with some of our aunts on my mom's side, and we had stopped at a restaurant. I don't remember if it was for lunch or for dinner, but and there's some discussion about what restaurant it was. I've heard Piccadilly's, I've heard Perkins, and maybe like a third sort of like unique to Savannah restaurant. I think it was a chain. I'm leaning toward Piccadilly's, which I was looking at. I haven't eaten at it many times, but it's like a cafeteria style restaurant, which I do kind of remember it being like that. Okay. Anyway, we were at a restaurant, and my brother, me and my younger brother, my older brother, me and my younger brother all went to go to the bathroom. We all went together because it was like, oh, you guys are kids, no adults going with you, so you guys all go together. Mm-hmm. My brother is older than me. He's probably like 11 or 12 at the time is our best guess. And it's kind of his job to like watch us. So we went to the restrooms. The restrooms were weird because we had to go down a incline, which was unusual for a restaurant like this. And you go down and there's like a little tunnel, and you go into this little tunnel, and there's like, I think restrooms on either side, if I'm remembering it correctly. And you go into the restroom. We went in. Nobody else was in there. And we went to use the stalls, and we saw immediately blood. My brother said, there's blood in here. And I don't remember there being blood in my stall. I think I used the bathroom in my stall without there being anything. But I do remember seeing the blood that he mentioned. And then we walked over to wash our hands, and there was blood all over the sink and blood on the mirror. And all three of us, Steve, me, and Ben, all saw this. And I remember we didn't wash our hands because it was like, that's the sink. I don't want to get close to that. And so we said, we need to go tell somebody. So we all left the bathroom, and we're freaked out. It was like a lot of blood. And we were like, what is going on here? It's definitely bright red. I remember it being not like movie blood. Very different, like real world blood. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like thick and kind of candy colored like you see.
Right. It was like watery.
A lot. Yeah, it was more watery, but and like dried in some spots, but not dried in others. It looked pretty fresh.
Now, was it like a spatter, or was it like a? What would you describe it as? Was it like a spray?
It
Or
was like, I just remember it like on the lip of the sink, all around it, and then some was on the mirror in front of us.
but no like handprints or any smudges or anything.
No
like that?
handprints. I don't remember if there were any smudges. I was very young, and I feel like I looked at it, and it was like freaking me out, and it was gross, and I didn't want to keep looking at it. So
Right.
it's just like a brief look.
Right.
And then I think Steve literally like pulled us out of there. Like we got to get out of here. So we went back to the table, and this is one of my strongest memories: is telling the aunts and my mother that this was happening, and them saying, "Someone cut themselves. Keep your voice down. Like, don't make a scene," because we were like making a scene, and they're like, "Don't make a scene. Sit down. Keep quiet." They were like in the middle of a conversation, sitting around food. You know what I mean? So they don't want to hear about blood. They're like, "Stop it, stop it. It wasn't a big deal. Someone cut themselves," and we were basically scolded for the whole story. Like, don't talk about it. Be quiet. And we were like, I remember being really, really frustrated because I was like, someone needs to go look at it. But like, no one did. I don't think we were with any men at the time, so I don't think anyone could like go check the men's room. And they didn't tell the waiter or anybody because it was very much like a don't make a splash, don't make a scene kind of thing situation. So nobody went and checked on it as far as we know. And then later, I don't know if it was that night, it might have been the next day, we were on a ghost tour, which I think was a horse-drawn carriage. In Savannah, because that was one of the things we went there to do. They do these ghost tours that you can sign up for. And I was really into ghosts at the time, so I thought this was cool. And we were going around, and we stopped in front of that very restaurant, and the person at the ghost tour told a story that it was previously, I think, home to slave owners who kept slaves in the basement. And that there is reports that you can still, like, that there's no locks on the bathroom stall doors, that there's still supernatural activity being reported specifically in the bathrooms of this restaurant. And that, and I actually do remember there being no locks. That was something that when they said that, I was like, they're right. There was no lock on the door, and I thought it was weird. And then I don't remember, one of my brothers says they think that they said specifically that there was blood on the walls has been reported. I don't know if that's something that was actually said on that, or if because we then told our story when we heard this on the thing. We're like, oh shit, this just happened. And my mom told the story, and then they said that they're going to start telling that on the ghost tour. So maybe if you hear a story about blood in a bathroom on a ghost tour in Savannah, maybe it has ties all the way back to what happened to me in the mid-'90s.
I love it. I haven't heard that story before. That's wild.
You haven't?
No.
So it's a pretty wild story, and like I've been trying to think, like I'm a very rational person. I'm like, what actually happened? And I'm like,
Right,
most
I was
likely
going to ask you that.
someone cut themselves, maybe, but it kind of felt like too much blood, which makes me worried that we were actually witnesses to a crime scene. Like someone got attacked in the bathroom, and there was enough blood to where it was significant. But the only thing is weird about that is like I don't remember, like, because someone else would have seen it, right? Like at some point. And I would think there would be more distinct, but there is also a possibility. It's mid-'90s. Maybe they were like, "Don't make a scene. We got customers in here," and maybe it was kind of handled quietly.
Everybody felt the same way as you guys, and then the myth continues.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird story because, like, if it was just me, I would probably have talked myself out of it and convinced myself that it didn't happen.
Right.
But the fact that my younger brother and my older brother we all saw it. We all saw the blood. Is what tells me that like something happened and something weird and like. Unexplainable. Probably we just witnessed some blood for some reason. Maybe the amount of blood grew in our minds over time because we definitely told this story repeatedly after the fact. That's definitely possible. I don't know what to think of it, but as much as I was shitting on all the supernatural stuff, I figured, I got a story. I might as well tell it. Maybe you want to believe that it was ghosts. Maybe it was. I don't know.
All right. So just due to proximity and like the number of times that I really enjoy Savannah. Actually, your bachelor party was in Savannah.
Was in Savannah? Yeah, we had a great time.
Savannah, I really enjoy the city. There's atrocities that have happened there before. There's full on war crimes, like the worst things that can possibly happen, genocide. Everything.
Known as one of the most quote unquote haunted.
That's what I was leading
places
to.
in all of America.
Right. That's what I was leading to. Is it's almost like a tourist attraction at this point for it to be one of the most haunted. It is the most haunted city in America.
Absolutely is. That's a big tourist thing for them, for sure.
Right. And so...
Oh, that's another option. Sorry, just real quick.
Go ahead.
Someone might have been trying to drum up some sort of weird interest. I don't know why they would do this, but like to fuck with some people and like if they like have a deal with the ghost company or something to like tell stories about it, maybe get people to come eat at the restaurant. I don't know. There could have been something weird like that happening.
That's their guerrilla marketing. They go around trying to scare kids with fake blood on the walls.
It seems extreme, but who knows?
So my story also takes place in Savannah. We had done a ghost tour, and that is a heightened. If you even like allow yourself to believe it at all, if you're in those moments and you think about, and the thing is like whether or not the ghosts are there or anything, the ghosts of the past are there. You know what I mean? These things did happen in these areas, and like horrible things. Giant. I think it's like the largest burial, like unmarked burial ground of all time is there as well. All kinds of madness.
And like how old are we talking here for your story?
This is not that long ago. This is like 4 years ago or so, 5 years ago.
Okay,
maybe.
interesting.
Yeah. So, this one's not very concrete, and I was alone, so there's not a ton to it. But I just figured I would tell this story. This is the most recent sort of like thing that really freaked me out. So we go on the tour. You're hearing about all this like murdering and just torturing and slaves and all this stuff, like people, even like war, like people being injured in war and like amputations, all kinds of stuff like that. You go on these tours, you go through these. We were on a trolley, and then we would get off at each location, go in and come out. That night, I fell asleep pretty easily, wasn't really thinking anything of it. That sort of stuff doesn't usually stick with me like this. But then, in a similar way to what I was talking about with my other story, I was shocked awake. Like it felt like I was shoved awake, and that could just be a dream kind of thing. But it felt like I was shoved awake. The hotel room that we were staying in was very dark, and I immediately turned my cell phone light on, and I started looking around the room. I turned the lights on, and it freaked me out. Definitely, I felt like I was shocked awake more than I had been in a long time, and I was like, who knows what that was, and like that's scary. And I took a couple minutes, and I actually like I put the lights on in the hotel room, and my girlfriend wakes up, and she's like what are you doing? And I was like, no, nothing, just looking around, and then like turned it back off, went back to sleep, and then a few hours later was shocked back awake again. And then couldn't really sleep very well for the rest of the night, and just kind of just laid in the bed in the dark, and I think I was in and out of sleep, but it was a crazy night. And I was like, was it just my mind playing tricks on me? Was I all freaked out from the ghost tour, which wasn't, when I was there, I wasn't scared. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, ooh, oh God, there's something over there. It was more of me just kind of being like, oh, interesting. Like these, these are horrific things that have happened here. And then that night, really being shocked awake twice was I don't know. Felt very like supernatural to me, obviously at the time.
That's funny. So that is actually something that happens to me pretty frequently.
Yeah.
My wife would tell you that probably like once a week or maybe a little less frequent than that, but like every so often I will wake up in the middle of the night totally freaked out. Sometimes I'll turn my light on and like shine it in the corner because I think I'll see something. Happens to me a lot. If it's supernatural, then I'm being haunted, man. I assume it is not. Also, I was going to say particular hotel rooms. It will happen to me more frequently in hotel rooms. I think unusual places, because you wake up and you're not like quite sure where you are, and it can freak you out big time.
Oh, the other thing is like I'm a very light sleeper too, so it's like I typically
you hear noises. Hotels are all kinds of weird noises.
And when I wake up, typically like I'm not like shocked awake. I would say that's very rare for me. But yeah, hotels are a little different.
Right. Anyway, I mean, it's still interesting. I mean, this goes to show why supernatural stories and stories of paranormal activity are so difficult to like pin down in any sort of way. Because like, if you want to believe that was something paranormal, like no one can tell you it wasn't. But then like there are a lot of possible explanations for either of these stories or any of these stories. But it is fun, right? It's fun to look at these, and I figured since we talked about it on the main podcast, this would be a time in which we can explore some of that. We're going to wrap this up now. Before we go, do we want to do any sort of quick touch in? Do you have any recommendations for people? Anything you've been checking out?
I mean, I've recently mentioned on our Exorcist episode that I was playing The Last of Us 2 and had finished it. I mean, incredible.
Same. I haven't finished it yet, but I really enjoyed it, and enjoying it.
I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima since then, and it's amazing. So just like, I've been really happy with the games that have been coming out of late, obviously with everything going on, to have this wealth of like stories and everything going on that aren't necessarily books or movies or anything like that. I love video games for the medium that they are as well. A massive one for me right now. I watched Hamilton on the 4th of July.
Oh, nice.
And it's stuck with me. I'm singing it every day. It's incredible, and I highly recommend everyone check it out. And I know that I'm extremely late to it, and people went to see it and everything like that. People have been saying it's amazing forever. I listened to the album forever ago. Like, I listened to it when it came out, But seeing it and watching it, it's just like a totally different experience, and it's just a work of genius, and it's amazing.
Cool. Love Lin-Manuel Miranda too. Cool guy.
Yeah, totally.
So for me, I Last of Us 2 haven't beat it yet. Excited to get to it. Watched a couple 80s films recently with my wife. We watched The Money Pit and Back to the Future. Money Pit doesn't really hold up. I had never seen it before. It was fun. I can see why people reference it. Whenever you buy if you buy new property, you're going to reference The Money Pit as soon as something breaks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I get the references to it. She had never seen Back to the Future though, which I found out while watching that. And we decided we were going to watch that one. We watched it last night, and that one's a lot of fun. I think it holds up a lot better. Not a perfect movie, although some people say it is. I really, really do like it. And I've been watching some Rick and Morty recently. And it's fun to see all the connections between Rick and Morty and Back to the Future, which I think is cool.
I'm really happy you're watching Rick and Morty because it's just so much fun.
One other recommendation, I don't know if you've seen this yet. I watched all of the Unsolved Mysteries series on Netflix, and I thought it was really well made, really interesting stuff. It was kind of a binge watch for me because I was really into it.
Cool.
Fascinating true crime type stuff. Definitely check that out if you're interested in that sort of thing.
I haven't seen any of that. I'll have to check that out.
You should check it out. I think Caitlin would really like it too.
Yeah.
Also, we've been playing D&D. I've been running a game for a small group. You among them. Having a lot of fun with that. I am a longtime D&D player. It's been really cool to get back into it. I've been doing some tabletop gaming with some other friends up here in Portland, but specifically playing some D&D has been really fun.
Specifically remotely as well. It's not anything in person.
We're doing it over on Roll20, website.
Right. It's been a lot of fun. I dabbled and knew some of the D&D sort of scenarios and things. Like I didn't have a huge group of friends to play with or anything like that, but to get to play it and be so sort of involved in it now is a lot of fun. And I kind of regret, in the times of my life when I had less responsibility, not, playing it a lot more with people. It's just a lot of fun. It's fun to role play. It's fun to like be a storyteller. It exercises so many fun muscles and the sense of community that's there for, especially right now. It's fun to get to talk to people at least,
I could do a whole episode talking about my love of D&D, why I like it, why it's a good creative outlet for me in some ways. But
I do have one more thing I wanted to mention, and it's very like filmmakery, but I wanted to recommend it to you and anybody who's very into sort of like filmmaking and stuff like that. There's a documentary that came out called The Ghost of Peter Sellers that I watched recently. And it's basically about Peter Sellers obviously was in Doctor Strangelove.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
He was, the biggest comedian of the time. He was collaborating with a director named Peter Medek. He was a Hungarian-born filmmaker who came to England after harrowing early years, during which he and his family were tormented by Nazis and Russians. I guess I wanted to give you the synopsis real quick because I want to do it justice. In 1973, Peter Sellers, one of the biggest comedy actors at the time, embarked on a pirate comedy for Columbia Pictures. He lost confidence with the film immediately and tried to sabotage it, firing the producers before turning on his friend and the film's young director, Peter Medek. Despite an illustrious career and the passing of 43 years since the unraveling of the production, Medek is still reeling from the disastrous experience and healing from the wounds inflicted by Peter Sellers and the film's failure. So he was an up-and-coming filmmaker. They were going out to film a pirate comedy, which was on an actual boat, which we know from Jaws and many other things is like the hardest thing to do.
Very difficult.
It was 1973, and then his star, Peter Sellers, the biggest comedian in the world, who was difficult to work with, started sabotaging it. And then after it was basically completed, there was like a period of like 4 years where it basically was like not going to come out. And it's just this idea of like perseverance and what it's like to, disagree with someone and what what really matters and that sort of stuff. And it's just an amazing documentary about filmmaking, about friendship, about all this stuff. And I highly recommend it. It's very, very interesting to watch.
Cool. All right. We're going to leave it here. In the future, we're going to try and keep this a little shorter. Maybe went a little long this week or this time. But we did want to say, once again, we would love for you to come over and join us on Patreon. It's a great way to support our podcast. And it would be a way to get these kind of episodes in the future, get them a week early. Get them when the news is freshest. So if you've been waiting for a reason to go over to our Patreon and check it out, hopefully this can be one for you.
All right, we will be back later this week with more regular content. We hope you enjoyed this, and until next time.
Thank you for listening.